good. The light's better right there. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Right in front of you. Right in front of you.
And Kira. Thank you.
Smile for me. There we go.
That's it.
And right in front of you again.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And then Carrie with the outfit right here. Hold that. Thank you.
Wow. This way. Right here.
Here we go. And just here in the middle. Oh, okay.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
One glance to your right. Thank you. Thank you.
Just take a little step over. Right there's cool. Right here. Right in front of you. Right here.
Never mind then.
How are you doing?
There you go. And straight ahead, please. Thank you.
Cheese.
And one glance back to the right, please.
Right here, please.
And you're right here.
Sir, can I get it?
And nice.
It's gonna be a
And sir.
Sir, right here.
And right here, please, sir. Here you go. Hold that. One more time.
Headshots. So let's get you all the way back.
And
Back. Oh, easy.
Against the wall. Against the wall.
And just here, right here, please, sir.
Thank you. So, what is it? Wanted this one, guys? Wanted this one? Okay.
Right here. Here we go. Hold that.
This is cool.
Excellent.
Right here. Look at my.
Right.
We did it.
Camera.
That was easy.
To your right.
Can we squeeze you guys in a little bit more? Squeeze in. Like you know, why don't we see it? This one. Thank you.
Well, they are great, strong female characters because they're real women who came up in journalism at a time when it was incredibly male-dominated. There were very few women working in newsrooms, and certainly none covering the crime beat. And Jean Cole was a real person. She worked her way up as a copy boy. She started off as a copy boy and then became an investigative reporter and continued to do that work her entire career. A very excellent and award-winning career that she had. And yeah, they were working moms. They were trying to take care of their families and run their households while they were getting death threats covering this case, and they've been largely erased from the narrative of the Boston Strangler, which is the most extraordinary thing about it. Well, it was an honor, of course, to play her, and I really enjoyed being with Kira every day because it really was life imitating art, because we were both working moms trying to be good at our jobs, playing these women who were working moms trying to be good at their jobs, and I really appreciated that, and the fact that we had the opportunity to make sure that these women's story was being told, and I think their families are happy that their names are finally attached to it. Certainly, it's a love song to female investigative journalists because we need to have people in power telling stories. Certainly, whoever's telling the story is in control of the narrative, and they determine where we put our focus. And these were the women who were warning the women of Boston that something was amiss. And if there were no women in the newsroom, those women would not have been warned. I mean, who knows how many lives got saved because people didn't open their doors to DeSalvo because of these news stories. Women were they were sleeping with ski poles and getting dogs and moving in together. I mean, they were really terrified. And this was 10 years before we even had the term serial killer. So we didn't even have a way to talk about what was happening.
I think it's a story about how hard it was for the women in the early 60s, the journalists, to do hard reporting. And the people, the women in journalism that I sought to give me a little history of their background, they said things really didn't change for women in the newsroom until about the mid 80s. You know, it was men were very dismissive of the women journalists, you know, and continued to be. My character is Jack McLean, and he's the managing editor of the paper. They had to go through him. They had to prove themselves, and I wasn't going to make it easy for them either. This is early 60s, and they had to prove themselves, and I was no better than any other man. But, they finally won me over.
The Boston Strangler, it's just such a dark chapter in American history, and the fact that it took so long for people to put the pieces together and start trying to assemble a case to catch this predator who was harming women on an almost daily basis at one point in the 1960s. It's such an important story to tell because it's about these incredible, unstoppable women that wouldn't take no for an answer, and they wouldn't stop hunting this guy and trying to tell the story that nobody wanted to be told. To me, that's why this film is so timely and why it's so important that we're getting to see it right now. I believe in my heart that the audience is going to respond the most to these two powerful leading women. Watching them stand up and fight for the safety and security of other women around them, it adds this level of heart and fear for our audience that I think is going to really make you unable to look away from the screen. Bringing to life an individual like Albert DeSalvo is something I don't take lightly, and I was so fortunate to be in the hands of a writer-director like Matt, who cared so deeply about the story he was telling and put so much thought and so much discipline into the work.
Outside of being a true crime thriller, it's really about, two women breaking the glass ceiling in a, social, political climate where, they were maybe not supposed to do that.
It's a thriller in every sense of the word. It's also, a newsroom drama. So the movie's playing with a lot of different genres, and I would definitely say the movie's suspenseful for sure.
I played Loretta McLaughlin in the Boston Strangler, who was the real-life woman who sort of made the link between these very notorious crimes and was one of the journalists who really pushed it forward as a very important case. I was really inspired by her because I felt like she was very strong and she was very forceful and she had a lot of stuff going against her, and she powered through. And so it was a very exciting role for me, and it was really, this is a very famous case, and the fact that she had been taken out of it and that the female journalists who really kind of pushed this forward had been largely forgotten, it felt very important to highlight those people. I think this is very much a film that is a love song to female investigative journalists, and I think it's really about how important it is to have women in places of power as far as storytelling goes, because this has been a case that was largely ignored by the then male establishment, and it took two women to really kind of force the case to prominence. It's a very punchy, fast-paced story about a very, very complex case.
I grew up in Boston, but I knew nothing about the case, and I started reading about it a few years ago, and I discovered this incredible murder mystery at the heart of the story. And I thought it'd be a really compelling film, and then I discovered these two reporters and thought it was just a great way to revisit the case. I love true crime, but I also am really drawn to character-driven stories, and I was so moved by the lives that these reporters led and the work that they did. So hopefully people appreciate it on all of those levels. I always think the film is about identity in so many different ways, about the identity of this killer or these killers, the changing identity of a city during that period, and of course the identity of these women who were, many things all at once, balancing work with their lives at a time when there were not a lot of women in the roles that they held. Loretta and Jean's story, I discovered these reporters who really were the first to break the story of the Boston Strangler. So it's all inspired by real people, by the real case, and hopefully people will enjoy the story.
When I found out about this film and the fact that it's still an opened case, it's frightening. So, that gut, nausea, fear that was pervasive at that time is still a story to be told. And then there's Loretta McLaughlin, Keira Knightley's character, who pushes this investigation through. So again, it's Women's Month. We look at all this, the glass ceiling she shattered to get to where she was, the job she did, the respect that she got subsequently from the Boston Police Department. It's really compelling. I'd say just the science of it all, the DNA, forensic psychiatry. These are all new and we take them for granted. Loretta McLaughlin was telling the Boston Police Department, hey, he smokes this brand of cigarette, and she's pointing out all these things. She's not a criminologist. She's not an investigator. She's a mom who was on the lifestyles desk and just has this life force to do this. And it was scary. The prospect of going out in the street to report this, it took a lot of guts and a lot of courage.